Replacing one of the greatest coaches of all time is never easy for any successor. After 14 seasons as the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Andy Reid was fired. In his time there, Andy won 58% of his games, made the playoffs 9 times, and went to the Super Bowl in 2004. Replacing him was not going to be easy. But just a year later, the new coach who had replaced Andy Reid had Eagles fans delighted. That coach, of course, was Chip Kelly. Kelly had never coached in the NFL before. He worked his way up from a Division III special teams coach to the head coaching position at the University of Oregon 17 years later. Since his days at University of New Hampshire in the early 2000s, Kelly was known as an innovative offensive mind. During his time at UNH, Kelly shattered just about every offensive record the program had, and his offense scored over 40 points in 7 games during the 2004 season. In 2005 and 2006, New Hampshire's quarterback Ricky Santos finished top 2 in Walter Payton Award voting, which was presented annually to the top player in all of their division. The influence of Chip Kelly was substantial, and eventually landed him a job at the University of Oregon. For his first 2 seasons there, Kelly was the offensive coordinator. The team put up big numbers offensively and even scored 56 points in the Sun Bowl in 2007. And more impressively, he did that with Oregon's third-string quarterback, a freshman quarterback making his first ever collegiate start. As for the team's regular starter Dennis Dixon, he was in the Heisman running up until his injury in November, unfortunately putting an end to those hopes. But Dixon, before Chip Kelly arrived, was a struggling quarterback. In 2008, which was Kelly's last season as the offensive coordinator, Oregon broke more offensive records that they had set the year prior, and they scored over 40 points in 7 games. They even had a 65-point outing against Oregon State, who was ranked 17th in the nation at that time. After 2008, Oregon's head coach Mike Bellotti retired from coaching and took a new position as the athletic director of the university. This opened the door for Chip Kelly to step in as the team's head coach beginning in the 2009 season. And 2009 went about as well as it could for Kelly. He became the first ever Pac-10 coach to win a conference championship in his first season. Kelly was also named Pac-10 Coach of the Year, becoming the second coach to win that award in the program's history. In 4 seasons as Oregon's head coach, Kelly finished with a record of 46-7. During his last season at Oregon in 2012, there were some rumors that the program wanted a more fan-friendly coach, and complaints arose that Kelly did not care about the other obligations that came with his job outside of coaching. But luckily for those skeptics, Kelly had received serious interest from the NFL for the past few years. The offseason prior in 2012, he turned down a head coaching interview with the Buccaneers. They, of course, went on to hire current Rutgers head coach Greg Schiano. But in 2013's offseason, Kelly reportedly interviewed for 3 NFL teams: the Buffalo Bills, the Cleveland Browns, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Kelly's interview with Cleveland lasted for 7 hours, but his interview with Philly lasted for more than 9 hours. On January 6th, Kelly announced he would take his name out of the running for the head coaching job in Philly and would return to Oregon. But 10 days later, shockingly, on January 16th, Kelly changed his mind. He took the head coaching job of the Eagles on a 5-year, $32.5 million deal. A few months after taking that job, news came out that Oregon had been penalized by the NCAA for recruiting players illegally, but Kelly himself came away with no blood on his hands after investigation. The stage was set in Philly. Kelly took over a team that went 4-12 the season prior, but there was still plenty of talent on the roster. The 2013 season did not start out too well for Kelly, as his Eagles dropped 3 of the first 4 games to start the season, including a game at Denver where they allowed 52 points. But in the second half of the year, the Eagles were one of the hottest teams in football, winning 7 of their final 8 games and clinching a playoff spot at 10-6. They did face plenty of adversity, as their starting quarterback Michael Vick was injured on multiple occasions, and there was also the whole Riley Cooper incident before the season even started. In Chip Kelly's offense, running back LaShawn McCoy led the league in rushing, going for over 100 yards per game on the ground, and quarterback Nick Foles had a breakout season, including tying an NFL record 7 touchdowns in 1 game. Foles led the NFL in a few passing categories that year, including yards per attempt, passer rating, and yards per completion. As winners of the NFC East that year, the Eagles hosted a playoff game versus the Saints in the wild card round. After once being down 20-7, Philly came came back and took a 1-point lead with under 5 minutes to go, but that left Drew Brees with too much time. Shane Graham hit a game-winning field goal for the Saints as time expired, and the Eagles' season came to a crushing end. On the bright side, second-year quarterback Nick Foles looked awesome, and more importantly, you had this offensive mastermind in Chip Kelly, who had the number 4 ranked offense in football that year. At the time, Kelly's offense was fascinating. A spread offense involving pre-snap motion, a ton of shotgun formations, and preferring outside runs rather than running between the tackles like most teams. They also went hurry up and no huddle more than any team in the league according to NFL Savant. Philly was so dedicated to this style that they ran no huddle more than double 29 of the 31 other teams in the league. At first it was working, but the NFL catches on to different playing styles. It was up for Kelly to keep adapting and remaining one step ahead of defensive coordinators. Another unique aspect about Kelly's program was that each Eagles player had an individual diet, workout, and smoothies. They were even ahead of their time in the sports science department, as Kelly hired Sean Holes, a man whose job title was sports science coordinator. In 2014, the expectations rose, and Kelly had to ensure that he was not just a one-year wonder. He would have to do that without Deshaun Jackson, who was surprisingly released during the offseason due to his off-field behavior. Jackson led the 2013 Eagles in receptions and receiving yards, but they still had enough to make it work offensively, even if it wasn't a popular move with Eagles fans. Philly got off to a great start, sitting at 9-3 after week 13. Unfortunately, they did lose Nick Foles after week 9 due to a collarbone injury, and DeMeco Ryans, one of their leaders on defense, was also lost for the season in week 9. Philly limped to the finish line, quarterbacked by Mark Sanchez, but their 3 straight losses in December put an end to their playoff hopes. The Eagles finished a respectable 10-6, but Dallas won the East at 12-4, and this was still during the time when only 2 teams made the wild card from each conference, not 3. If it were today's format, then the 2014 Eagles squad would have clinched a playoff spot. Although they missed the playoffs and were without a starting quarterback for half the season, Philly ranked as the 3rd best scoring offense in football. It just shows you the impact that Chip Kelly had on not only his team, but the entire league as a whole. The good news is that Kelly was off to a 20-12 record to begin his NFL coaching career. The bad news was he was still without a playoff win, and the Eagles were still without a franchise quarterback. It was after this 2014 season where the Chip Kelly experiment started to show some cracks, and a decision by Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie probably inadvertently led to Kelly's downfall. On January 2nd, 2015, Lurie announced that Chip Kelly would assume control of the roster and personnel moves. The vice president of player personnel, Tom Gamble, was let go, and Howie Roseman, the current Eagles GM, was demoted technically and took Gamble's now vacated position. So in other words, Chip Kelly was now the main guy. Not only was he the head coach, but he was also now the GM. During Kelly's first 2 years in Philly, he certainly had influence on the roster, more specifically who made the final 53-man roster. At that time though, it was still up to Howie Roseman who they drafted, who they signed in free agency, and who they traded for. But in 2015, it was all Chip Kelly. Not only to coach the team, but to pick and choose who he was going to coach on a weekly basis. Kelly definitely did not waste any time, and on March 8th of 2015, he sent Eagles all-time leading rusher LeSean McCoy to the Buffalo Bills for linebacker Kiko Alonso. When McCoy got traded, he was not afraid to share his feelings and thoughts towards Chip Kelly, claiming that his moves since arriving were racially motivated, to which DeMarco Murray, the running back signed to replace McCoy, made a pretty sarcastic comment about McCoy's claim. Kelly bolstered the running back room with DeMarco Murray and Ryan Matthews, the former Charger, and he executed a trade for a quarterback, acquiring the former #1 overall pick, Sam Bradford. Fun fact, by the way, DeMarco Murray and Sam Bradford were roommates in college. The Bradford trade was definitely risky. Not only did it cost a 2nd-round pick and a 4th-round pick and Nick Foles, but Bradford himself had not played football in a year and a half due to his 2nd career ACL tear. In addition to that, they also signed cornerback Byron Maxwell to a 6-year, $63 million contract. Maxwell was a pretty good player, but had the luxury of playing with the Legion of Boom secondary, and truthfully, he was overpaid. Kelly then released Pro Bowl guard Evan Mathis over a contract dispute. He admitted to trying to trade away Mathis the season prior, but it never came to fruition. Mathis was up there in age at 33 years old, but he was still viewed as one of the best best guards in the league. He also let Jeremy Maclin and Trent Cole leave in free agency. And for some reason, he signed Tim Tebow, who at that point was 4 years removed from starting in the NFL. And to top things off, Kelly in his first draft as the head man took Nelson Agholor in the first round. In fairness, he did take Jordan Hicks, who's had a solid career, and Eric Rowe, who's a decent player, but still, that was not the right year to take a wide receiver looking back on it. It was reported almost a year later that Kelly had offered a massive haul to the Titans for the second overall pick, and apparently he wanted Marcus Mariota. But as we know, the Titans turned that down and took Mariota themselves. In hindsight, Tennessee probably should have taken that offer, but oh well. When the season began, it did not get off to a good start. Philly found themselves sitting at 1-3. The team's big offseason acquisitions looked horrible too, as Sam Bradford, DeMarco Murray, and Byron Maxwell all struggled mightily out of the gate. Things got a little better, but they still went into their bye week at 3-4. In their first game out of the bye, the Eagles had what seemed like a season-saving win in overtime versus their division rival Cowboys. Shout out to Jordan Matthews, who now plays tight end for the Carolina Panthers practice squad. But after a close loss to Miami in Week 10, a game in which Sam Bradford left early due to a shoulder injury that costed him 2.5 games, the wheels completely fell off. In the next 2 games combined, Philly allowed 90 points to their opponents, and their offense failed to score over 17 points in either game. Being that the latter of those losses was on national TV on Thanksgiving, and the team falling to 4-7, the rumors of Kelly's job security started to arise. The game on Thanksgiving versus Detroit got so out of hand in the second quarter that the Lions offense outscored Philly's 193 to -8. The Eagles defense was breaking down at this point, and while Kelly's offenses always put up impressive numbers, the up-tempo and aggressive style of offense meant that their defense was on the field for way too long at times. Philly's offense that year ranked dead last in the NFL in offensive time of possession, and by a decent margin too. Add that with a bad secondary highlighted by Byron Maxwell himself, and they were a mess defensively. To the Eagles' credit though, they did win their next 2 games, including an upset at New England. Right when you thought they might be turning a corner and saving their season once again, they could not keep it going. They dropped their next 2 games, including a loss to the Redskins, which mathematically eliminated the Eagles from playoff contention. There was now 1 game left of the 2015 season, but Kelly was not there to coach for it. After the Redskins loss, Kelly was released by the Eagles, finishing with a 26-21 career record and a playoff appearance in just about 3 years. The timing of the move was a bit surprising, but maybe not the move itself. Kelly did have 2 more years under contract, but owner Jeffrey Lurie saw the writing on the wall, especially after giving Kelly too much power as the GM and seeing how poorly that turned out, and chances are he was not going to relinquish that power. It didn't take long for Kelly to garner interest from other NFL teams, and just a week later he found himself interviewing for the 49ers job. San Francisco, of course, had just moved off of Jim Harbaugh 2 years prior, and Jim Tomasulo was a one-and-done head coach in 2015. A week later, it was announced that Kelly had been hired by the 49ers with a nice 4-year, $24 million contract to go along with it. It didn't take long for the drama to begin, as reports came out that Kelly and Niners GM Trent Baalke already had friction, and mind you, this was not even 4 months into Kelly being hired. The NFL draft hadn't even happened yet. Baalke had previously clashed with Jim Harbaugh when both of them were together in San Francisco, so this was nothing new. The 49ers offensive talent was pretty lackluster heading into 2016. Their quarterback 1 battle was between Blaine Gabbert and Colin Kaepernick, and their wide receiver 1 was Torrey Smith. Kelly announced he was going with Blaine Gabbert to start the year, and the 49ers opened up their season at home on Monday Night Football versus the Rams. The Rams were not expected to be a good team, but the Niners really asserted their dominance. So things in San Francisco were off to a great start for Chip Kelly. So what if there was friction between him and Baalke? winning cures all. At least we thought so. Well, sadly for the 49ers, they didn't do much winning after that. They actually lost their next 13 games in a row, dropping to 1-13 on the season, and it was as bad as it sounded. This team blew a double-digit lead to Bryce Petty and the Jets. That's how bad they were. They also had a game versus the Bears where they had 6 total passing yards on the entire day. After the 1-13 start and the Browns finally winning a game that year, the Niners were in the driver's seat for the first overall pick. But sadly for them, their Week 16 win versus the Rams dropped them back to the 2nd overall pick. Without that win, the 49ers would have picked 1st overall, and probably would have had Myles Garrett right now. Their 2-14 finish was tied for the worst season in 49ers history, and Kelly, just after one season, was fired for the 2nd consecutive offseason. Trent Baalke was released as well. Similar issues that he dealt with in Philly followed him to San Francisco. His high-tempo offense once again caused his defense to be on the field for way too long, and San Francisco by far had the worst run defense in football that year. For all 4 seasons Kelly coached in the NFL, his offenses ranked dead last in the NFL in time of possession. It caused his defenses to crumble every year, and it was just not sustainable. From reports that surfaced after, it sounded like the 2016 49ers had a pretty toxic environment. Apparently, Chip Kelly believed that Baalke was trying to get him fired for weeks, and there was a real power struggle between the two. A report also came out that Kelly had a chance to persuade Niners ownership to give him another year, but I guess he was not convincing enough. Kelly spent 2017 away from coaching and became a college football studio analyst for ESPN. But a year later, it was back to coaching. In 2018, Kelly took the head coaching job with UCLA and even interviewed with the University of Florida as well. It didn't start off well, but the past 3 seasons have looked better. Overall, his record at UCLA as the head coach is 35-34. There have been recent rumors of Kelly possibly returning to the NFL, but he did just sign an extension with the Bruins, so it does seem unlikely. Although, the idea has been thrown out there of him possibly joining the Seahawks as an offensive coordinator if Dan Quinn were to get the head coaching job. So why did the Chip Kelly experiment fail in the NFL? One of the more obvious reasons was the toll it took on the defensive side of the ball. According to ESPN Stats and Information, the Eagles averaged a play once every 23.1 seconds of possession, while under Kelly. That was 3 seconds faster than any other team. As a result, their time of possession was in the bottom of the league every single year, forcing an already tired defense to shoulder more of the load. He also could not find players to fit his scheme, even as a GM. His decision to replace LaShawn McCoy, who was a perfect scheme fit, for DeMarco Murray, who was not a good scheme fit, was one of the few examples. Moving on from Deshaun Jackson did not sit right with people either, especially when Djax went to a division rival and knocked the Eagles out of the playoff race in 2015. In fairness to Kelly though, he never had a great quarterback. He had a late career Mike Vick, Nick Foles, Sam Bradford, Mark Sanchez, Blaine Gabbert, and Colin Kaepernick. He once again did try to trade up for Marcus Mariota, but ended up settling for Bradford. I also learned from doing research on this video that when the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2017, the players were still drinking the Chip Kelly smoothies. Doug Peterson, who was Kelly's successor, admitted that when Nick Foles helped make the Super Bowl run, they took plays out of Chip Kelly's playbook and tried to recapture the 2013 version of Foles, who at that point was playing under Chip Kelly. So while Kelly left a sour taste in the mouths of all Eagles fans, he did have influence on the franchise's one and only Super Bowl. That'll do it. Of course, leave a like and subscribe for more NFL videos like this. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll talk to you guys next time.